What's a scientific fact that creeps you out? Honestly, nothing is more creepy than how deep sea anglerfish mate. The deep sea is dark, and the anglerfish are spread very thinly. Therefore, when an anglerfish meets another anglerfish, it's incredibly important they get the chance to mate over and over again. The evolutionary strategy that deep sea anglerfish devise is extra creepy. The male latches onto the female, biting her and never letting go. That way he can inseminate the eggs she drops. Not that bad so far, right? But wait. How does he eat if he's latched on his mate? Well, the circulatory system's fuse in the female provides nutrients for the male through this fused circulatory system. The true horror starts here. The organs of male start to wither and atrophy, being absorbed into the female. Eventually, the male is reduced to a lump of testicles the females use to fertilize their eggs. Females are often covered in bumps of several males that have melted into the female, becoming a literal body horror lump of meat on the female. A fever is your body way of saying, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We either destroy the enemy or we die with them. Caterpillars turn completely into goo in their cocoon, and then become a butterfly. Semicolon. Edit. This blew up. According to my inbox, many people have been creeped out. A good day's work. Your brain is making decisions before you are even aware of the decisions it has made. It also makes decisions based off of learned behavior and you just go along with it. Because of some pesticides used, roaches won't go anywhere near a meth lab. Edit. Didn't expect this much after reading some RPF. For those you are asking, meth labs have been known to produce toxic gas, like phosphine, which a common insecticide. Phosphine is often used in silos to deal with vermins. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the fact we don't have to deal with swarms of cranked up cockroaches. If you believe strongly enough that you have been cursed, your brain can shut itself off entirely in severe cases. The psychological term for it is voodoo death syndrome. It's just the fact you can literally think yourself to death that unsettles me so. That as the permafrost melts, a lot of locked up methane will be released, and microorganisms there will wake up and do their jobs, breaking down organic matter, and release more methane and greenhouse gases, and possible ancient diseases. That the only reason you are a functional human is that your DNA is so tangled that entire sections can't get decoded and screw it up. Edit. Turns out I must have majorly misunderstood something, as this is very wrong. Thanks Reddit, but as far as I'm aware the brain fact is true though. Actually better one. If you disconnect the halves of the brain and ask them to pick out something they prefer, your hands will disagree. What's your favorite color will result in one hand choosing red but one choosing green. Go look up split brain patients. A gamma ray burst could wipe out all life on Earth instantly with no warning. What? When the Titanic sank, none of the shoes decomposed, so there's ton of shoes at the bottom of the ocean. Free shoes. Just how big of a number a mole actually is. The sudden urge to jump off of a very high height. You can be physically and mentally stable to the greatest degree and still have this feeling when at such a high height. I heard it's the call of the void and it's a normal human thought. Some mutations of just one letter in the DNA code can kill the fetus almost instantly. But some people live and have a seemingly healthy life while missing a whole chromosome. If you understand anything about biology, that's completely wild. Thinking about how breathing and lungs work freaks me out. Once I start thinking about it, all I can think about is my breathing, and then I have to force myself to stop thinking about it. Thinking about it always switches my breathing to manual rather than automatic. Doctors, scientists are barely keeping up with the influenza virus. It keeps on mutating rapidly. It really wants to get inside you. At least something wants to. Let me in. Let me in. There is something called the squeeze, where when people had old scuba suits with tubes, you could actually get sucked into that tube if the pressure was off. You are literally shredded through your own breathing tube. That so many vegetables came from the same plant. Broccoli, kale, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, etc. They are, botanically speaking, the same species. Humans have just bred them to emphasize different traits, buds, leaves, tubers. Imagine if humans were as genetically flexible. Imagine a person walking around with giant toes, but otherwise normal. Actually, plant genetics in general is a weird world. Your brain literally creates your own reality and your senses and body just go along with it. That there are little crab-like things crawling on your face. Edit. Not sure why this has a wholesome award. But hey, that's awesome. Thanks. So if I boil my face I have a lunch. You get and cure cancer in your own body thousands of times a day. The existence of prions. There is more microorganisms on your body than people on Earth. Spider webs were used as bandages in ancient times. Edit. Wow guys, didn't expect so many replies. I didn't think my creepy scientific fact would get so much attention. Thanks for all the upvotes and comments. Have a good day guys. Not exactly scientific or creepy but it's close enough and I want to contribute. Mouth pipetting was a thing in labs in the 1980s. A pipette is, for simplicity's sake, a glass straw that lab staff would use to transfer liquids. Nowadays we use special bulbs that when squeezed would suck up the liquid for us. Kinda like a turkey baster or eyedropper. Before we had these bulbs, lab workers had to use their mouths to suck up the liquid. Which meant if they weren't careful they'd get whatever they were sucking up in their mouth. I'm currently training to be MLAT and those fluids would usually be urine, liquid stool, sputum and so on. Rogue black holes. There are black holes that just are floating around in space and potentially eyeing up solar system just by passing through it. Edit. I suck at spelling. Parasites can live anywhere inside of you. For years unnoticed. A simple migraine could be a tapeworm crawling in your brain, causing damage. Your eyes begin to blur frequently and you don't know why and it's not getting better. Losing weight and having diarrhea but it's not a stomach bug. Well, I guess it is. You are having a difficult time catching your breath and your chest doesn't feel right. It could just be some parasite hanging out using you. Top 5 ways to intensify anxiety. Number 1. A doctor once told me, on average every human has 3 anomalies. Not all are visible. I was born with 6 toes on each foot, some extra nipples and a weird little dimple on my neck that apparently is a second throat. One of my grandfathers had a cleft lip, webbed toes and a couple extra kidneys. That's 3 anomalies apiece. After being decapitated there's still few seconds of brain activity that happen before you snuff out. I read this in the book Stiff by Mary Roach. I'm not sure how much I recall, or how correctly I recall, but 2 things stuck with me. Apparently they had to change the head catching baskets sometimes because the severed heads would try to chew through them. The other thing that stuck with me is that some doctor was experimenting with the heads right after decapitation. He would inject oxygenated blood into the heads and they would move their eyes around and look at him. Humans are bioluminescent, nothing to do with body temperature. We emit visible light that can be photographed in specific conditions. But this light isn't visible to us, which makes it a strange thing to have evolved. And begs the question, what organisms is this light visible to? And why? Edit. Adding an edit for all the comments explaining evolution. Please read the thread before commenting. I find this a creepy fact due to implications on interspecific relationships. Not because I think prehistoric humans went shopping for a bioluminescent hat with a specific motive in mind. Due to relativity, it is impossible to measure the speed of light in a straight line. The only way we've measured it is by round trip with mirrors. For all we know, it could be instantaneous going one way, and half the speed of light in the other. And it would be impossible to tell. You can be convinced you committed a crime. You can also give false confessions. The mantis shrimp can see colors that our eyes aren't capable of perceiving. Think about that. What else are we just not capable of sensing? Ah yes. I am eternally cursed with nightmare fuel thanks to someone mentioning something like this in a YouTube video. 3. The human eye perceives different spectrums of light, for example. It can't detect infrared or ultraviolet light. And so we need special instruments to observe those. Which brings up an interesting idea, that feeling that you're being watched. Even when you know for a fact that you're totally alone, could it be because there are creatures standing right next to you? But they can only be perceived in a spectrum of light that we cannot observe? Edit. The first eye that can successfully pass the Turing test would be able to pretend that it couldn't. Most of the water on the earth will rain down at some point. The crappy fact about this is that the human body is 60% water. Meaning that at some point the same water that runs throughout your body, the one on your blood, bones, brain, etc., will rain down at some point. The universe is unbelievably infinite, while simultaneously unbelievably infinitesimal. The universe has 10 circumflex 22 stars. A rough guess. This is an unfathomably large number for humans to comprehend. But bear with me. There is roughly 100,000 million stars in our galaxy alone. And there are roughly 125 billion galaxies. A single drop of water contains 10 circumflex 21 H2O molecules. Not too far off from the number of stars in the whole universe. A very similar number. But contained in a single drop of water. It blows my mind that the universe can contain such mind-boggling numbers of things on such wildly different scales. There is so much to reality that the human mind just isn't capable of grasping. We know more about the moon than we do our own oceans. The sun will eventually die out. When I was 10, I was watching the Discovery Science and I loved my science documentaries, and this one was going on about how the sun will expand to a red giant and expand outwards and devour Mercury and Venus, and all life on Earth will die and the oceans will boil away. Violets secrete a chemical that causes you to forget what they smell like afterwards. You're essentially getting roofied every time you sniff one. When you go to get something from one room or upstairs and suddenly forget why you went in there, it's called a boundary event. Usually, if you go back to where you started through the boundary, you'll remember it again. I could be drinking the same water that my extremely far relative drank back in like the 1800s. Apparently, the following statement creeps others out. Your bones are wet. Again? I'd only just dried them out. I had a professor in college who said that if you weren't terrified by the concept of entropy, you didn't fully understand it. The grand scale and size of the universe never fails to instill Lovecraftian anxiety in me. Years ago I saw an episode of A Monsters Inside Me where this guy was doing something outside and a fly flew into his eye. It only made contact for about a microsecond, but it was enough time for it to lay eggs. After they hatched, they started eating his eye from the inside and he was starting to go blind until a doctor figured out what was wrong. Just imagine that. Getting your eye eaten from the inside and losing your sight all because a fly very briefly made contact with you. Ever since I learned about this, I get really paranoid when there is a fly around my face because of the fact that this could possibly happen to me. There is a fungus that turns us into zombies. And when they die, it will be in the best position to spread more of the spores. Basically the entirety of pregnancy, childbirth. Like, this other living organism embeds itself in the lining of my uterus, feeds off my blood, makes me grow an entirely new organ, the placenta, just to feed protect it while it grows. Then it comes out while basically still gestating. Other mammals' babies can walk and run within minutes of birth. Ours can't even hold up their giant domes. Just because the hole I have to push it through won't be big enough for its head if it stays in any longer. Oh. And once I've done all that, I get to have the longest and worst period of my life while my uterus sheds out 40 weeks of uterine lining. I've had a kid and it still s me up. The average number of legs for the human population is less than 2. Same could be said for arms. But I'll top your creepy fact with this one. The average number of heads per body is more than 1. It's rare. But you can die at any moment for literally no reason at all. Your body just stops working. Just unplug it, then plug it in again. Any cosmological fact is actually scary. You know, we can randomly be in the path of a gamma burst, an asteroid or something else, and we would never see it coming. You might just go to sleep today and in the middle of the night scientists discover a gamma ray coming at us. Gone. The universe doesn't stop there, it continues. Our existence is less than a galactic blink. The universe expands and there will be a day that our planet will be floating alone and cold in darkness forever too. That 99% of all life that has ever existed has gone extinct. Your digestive tract is an unbroken tube from mouth to anus. Your lips are basically the other end of your butthole. Your skeleton isn't inside of you. You're inside of your skeleton. That all of the COVID-19 virus that exists, and has killed millions, would fit inside a Coke can. A buddy of mine is a pilot for a major airline. In top 3 of airlines. I asked him exactly how much flying are you actually doing during a flight? Like how much are you controlling the plane? He said about 5%. 95% of a flight is completely automated. He said he's involved a little bit on takeoff and on the landing, but for the most part the plane flies itself unless something major happens in flight. With a lethal dose of radiation, victims of acute radiation sickness will, after hours of vomiting and feeling horrible, start to feel much better. Then, they will descend into a hell of a painful death. If the magnetism between protons and electrons weakens a tiny bit, matter disintegrates like a Thanos snapping his fingers. In the United States, approximately 1 in every 50 people have an unruptured aneurysm. Most will never rupture, but will just sit there in your brain, silently waiting. If not for a thin layer of goop, our bodies would eat our eyes. I'm pretty sure scientific fact is a bit of an oxymoron. Science always leaves room for an improvement on a theory. That being said, where TF is the 95% of the mass of the universe at? Why can't we find it? That if we interacted with aliens there would be a mass plague on both sides, similar to smallpox on Native Americans. The atoms in us were originally in our sun. We are literally children of our sun. The fact that bacteria in your gut can be more harmful than any flesh-eating virus. Not if I kill it with so much gin. Trees can communicate with each other via roots, and in time of drought they coordinate that the poorly ones get the water first. Heard that on NPR podcast Radio Lab. Mind blowing. Oxygen makes you old. Dolphins have sex for pleasure, and are also known to drown humans in their attempt to mate with them. I repeat. Dolphins, people. I should not have clicked on this. I should not have clicked on this. I should not have clicked on this. People with IQs lower than 87 are not suitable for a functional job with some degree of responsibility. That is why US Army does not enlist anyone with an IQ less than 83. That the universe will collapse, and even though I will be long dead, I just picture myself staring into blackness for eternity. And that I will die. Again, I picture the blackness and anxiety. Everyone I love will be dead. And what was the point of anything? If it's all gone and no one remembers anything. That's why I mostly play stupid mobile games and watch commercials. As it's too mundane and stress-free happy. The fact that every atom, molecule, whatever is on a set destination. No matter what. Even say an asteroid hits another one and all the particles fly out. It was always going to be that way. It doesn't matter that the particles change direction. They were always on that path. Every reaction is always on a set destination. And then I'm alive. Does free will exist? Was I always going to eat those chicken nuggets because I wanted them? Or were the electrical signals and atoms and whatever already on that set path? Keeps me up at night. I try to ignore it though. Internal structural failures. Sometimes you don't know about them until the structure catastrophically fails. The fact that we exist. The fact that we're the only human species left when there were as many as 8 different ones on Earth. And we see a tendency for them to disappear shortly after our species reached their region of the globe. So, it is not impossible that the reason we're the only one left is that we systematically killed and or starved them to extinction. Also, it's crazy to think that for so long we had forgotten that other species existed altogether. And many of our religions prided themselves for being unique. I know this isn't what the question asked. But looking up at the daytime sky with nothing from the ground in your field of vision for more than a couple seconds makes my brain start to really freak out and I lose all sense of balance and orientation. I've been trying to do it a little bit at a time, yes. Lockdown has made things weird, but still can't get used to the feeling. Oddly enough, it feels like your feet start to lift off the ground a bit. Nighttime is also weird, but more euphoric before the panic sets in. The placebo effect. Some studies have shown that in pain management, placebo can outdo actual pain remedying drugs. The mind is such a powerful thing, I don't think we realize all the things we placebo to affect in our lives. Toddlers have all their adult teeth fully formed in cavities in their skull. There is a supermassive star 7,600 light years away named Eta Carinae. It is about 200 times the mass of our sun. Its size is about the size of our entire solar system. It is 5 million times brighter than our sun. And it is very near supernova. It might have already happened and the shock wave is on the way. It probably is far enough away to where it won't destroy our solar system. Probably. When you smell a fart, you're actually breathing microscopic droplets of feces. The gases are odorless. Practically every surface where people live is covered in fecal bacteria. When I was a little kid and heard that the sun would eventually die and take the earth with it, I went in a state of panic for several days before remembering, oh right, that's like 20 billion years away. Repressed memories and severe mental illnesses can suddenly appear in someone's 30s. I could live a totally normal life and then one day at the age of 35 wake up and go, oh my god, I was ARPed as a child. And just suddenly have to live with that knowledge. We have the same atoms in us as 3,000 individuals who existed long before us. And have since died, decomposed, and consumed by us in the form of food. Not sure if it's been said yet, but humans are born with 2 sets of teeth in our skulls. The baby teeth and the adult teeth that are just waiting in the wings and will eventually replace the baby teeth. The fact itself isn't creepy per se, but it becomes more of a reality if you see images of a child's skull with just so many teeth. The double slit experiment and the observer effect. Mind blown. Edit. 95% of the ocean is still undiscovered. Imagine the monstrosities that could live somewhere in the deep. SpongeBob. I recently learned by medical surgery when I die someone could take my eyes and be able to see with them. Just the idea of them seeing the world through my eyes is really freaky. No one knows how Anesthesia works. They know what it does, but we don't know how. Half the people have an IQ below 100. Quantum entanglement and double slit experiment. Here's a good one. Your eyes are an exposed extension of your brain. In other words, and apologies if it sounds a little sociopathic, but if you take apart your head piece by piece with just the brain intact, your eyes would be dangling from the brain. Or, you can just Google eyes and the brain to see what I mean. There were probably thousands of potential Napoleons, Caesars, Einsteins, Hitlers, Stalins. We are alone in the universe. Or we are not. Both are equally disturbing. Not so much creepy but cool. There is a planet that is estimated to be made up of diamonds due to the carbon on the planet. Nothing will make you special because 1000 years from now probably no one will know you. Genghis Khan would disagree. The universe is so vast as you were to fall out of a space station's orbit and drift away you would see nothing but darkness and feel nothing but cold until your oxygen runs out and you suffocate. That if you smell a drink and it smells like cinnamon and it's not supposed to or it doesn't contain cinnamon I might be poisoned. Not so much as a fact but an observation. Viruses are both dead, alive, and inanimate all at the same time. We still don't know why or how they originally came into existence in the first place. And theoretically, the only possible function they serve in any species, especially humans, is solely to cap the population growth rate. Therefore, nature, in all its nihilistic behavior, made a thing to destroy life itself by making it a byproduct of too much life according to unexplained forces in nature. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Air bubbles in your heart, the existence of tapeworms. Flies take a dump every time they land. In 1998 we technically made the first cloned human hybrid between the cells from a man's leg and a cow egg. It was cultured into an embryo. It was destroyed after 12 days. What? It's even creepier knowing the fact that there may be secret underground government laboratories housing these anomalies. Hidden away and never seeing the light of day. Found this out the hard way with my daughter when she was just shy of 6 months old, but babies can roll over the wrong way and snap their humerus. Spiral fracture all because she rolled onto her back while her arm was under her. There are more galaxies in the universe than grains of sand in all the beaches in the world. My balls hurt when I pee. You might want to get that checked out. That's the pee leaving the balls.